Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we are back talking about books. We will be talking about all the books I read between January and March this year. It was a total of 9 books. I started the year in a bit of a reading slump, especially February. I was in a reading slump, so it was mostly January and March. So let's start talking about it. I have 9 books to talk about it with you. So the main literary theme of the year so far, and it will be the main literary theme of this video, have been closing of chapters, lackluster, or is there kind of books. It doesn't mean there weren't good books. There were a few I actually really enjoyed. There were 5 stars books, but there were quite a bit of them that I didn't resonate with, or I barely remember them, and they are there. There are also some I really enjoyed when I first read, but now I barely think about it. They're there again. And yeah, there are the ones also I didn't like. So let's start with a mini review of all the 9 books I read between February and March this year. The first one is The Mountain Is You, Transforming Self-Sabotage into Self-Mastery by Brianna Wiest. I gave this one a 5 stars. As the title would suggest, The Mountain Is You is a non-fiction self-help book that explores the themes of self-sabotage and the why and how we do it. This is not the type of book I would typically pick up, but it appears so often on my TikTok and Pinterest feeds that I just felt so compelled, and I felt it was almost a necessity for me to read and see why I kept getting recommended this book so often. And it called me out quite a bit, and I wasn't expecting this book to call me out so much, even though I have known for years that I occasionally dabble in self-sabotage, mainly because I'm a perfectionist, so I never feel like my work it's perfect enough, it's good enough. This book has quite a quotable Instagram style of writing, and I know some people don't like that. Personally, I don't care. Because it has this Instagram style of writing, it is not a difficult book to read. It doesn't have a difficult vocabulary. It is quite easy to understand. And overall, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 5 stars, and I'm glad to have read it. I would definitely recommend it if you are a 20-something-year-old, if you are feeling lost, if you are dealing with self-sabotage cycles. I recommend you reading it. It might help you change your point of view. It might help you change a bit of your behavior. Next, the second book I read this year, I am very confused by the name of it in English. I saw in a bookstore it was called by 2 names, either Lullaby or The Perfect Nanny. The original name in French is Chanson Douce. It is by Leila Slimani. I have the physical copy of it. Let's pick it up with one hand. So I believe the cover is quite similar in most editions, in most translations. This book starts by following Miriam. She's a stay-at-home mom that decides to go back to work. So she and her husband, they go on the journey to find a nanny for their children, and they end up hiring Louise, who is a quiet, polite woman that seems to be the perfect nanny for her children. She gets along really well with the kids, and then one day tragedy happens in their life. And when I first read about this book, I have been excited to read about this book for years now, but for some reason I kept putting it off or procrastinating reading this book. And differently from what I first thought, this isn't a mystery, this isn't exactly a thriller. It is much more of a character study. We focus much more on the minds and lives of the characters than the plot itself. I think there is happening some kind of dog brawl. I really love Chanson Douce. When I first read it, I thought it was genius, and I still think it is a really interesting book. I think the writing is incredible. Originally, I gave this book 5 stars, but then I went back and updated to 4 stars because as of today, I actually barely think about it. It's there on my bookshelf. I'm glad I read it because I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend this to people because I still think this is a really nice book. I think it is a fun and interesting read, but it didn't captivate me as much as I thought at first. Next, I also have the physical copy of this one. It is Happening by Annie Ernaux. Happening is an autobiographical novel by Annie Ernaux. There were reminiscences on a life-changing event, and it was her search and illegal abortion in 1963 France. This is definitely not a book for everyone. The topic is quite controversial. This text is quite graphic at parts, but personally, I actually really enjoyed this book. I think it is really well written. I think Annie Ernaux is a brilliant writer, and well, she needs to be won a Nobel Prize. But yeah, I think this book is really well written. I think the narrative is very powerful, and it makes the reader reflect on the topic, even if it is very controversial. Next is a book that I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads because I like to be nice, but realistically I would give like 2.5 because I don't think it's bad enough to be a 2, but it is also not good enough to be a 3, and it is By a Thread by Lucy Score. I found this book, I think it was because it was recommended on my Kindle page, and later I saw it on TikTok. Like, people were talking on TikTok saying really good things about it, and I don't understand them. So By a Thread, it is an enemies to lovers workplace romance novel by Lucy Score. It follows Ali and Dominic. Dominic, he's some kind of creative director, something similar to it in his family's fashion magazine, while Ali, she's a waitress. At least she's a waitress until Dominic gets her fired and his mom hires her. And it took me a while to get into this book, and it overall was very blah kind of novel, and the characters, they annoyed me so much. Dominic is a childish asshole. Ali, really, Ali, half of the book could have been solved if Ali accepted help from her friend and from Dominic, but she's a prideful person, and apparently she would rather skip meals and be hungry than accept help. And overall, these characters, they really annoyed me. And honestly, for me, it was kind of difficult to believe they were both like in their late 30s, mid 40s, because they seem so immature. They seem like 20-something-year-old, and I feel like I can say this because I am a 20-something-year-old. And why were they acting this way? I don't know. Also, the way they talked about fashion in this book, it gave me the ick. The fact that I'm a fashion lover definitely played a part in me getting the ick from this book, because considering this story takes place in the high fashion sphere, I think the author should have done like the bare minimum of research and to know the difference between ready-to-wear collections and ready-to-wear pieces and haute couture pieces, because the way she portrays it, like, it's completely unrealistic. The dynamics in the office, they don't seem very realistic, and this is coming from a person that graduated in communication. And also the whole, no, it gave me the ick, you know, the whole professional part gave me the ick. The characters annoy me, and honestly, the third act breakup scene, what Dominic did for me is unforgivable, and I think it is a massive red flag uh, to his immaturity, to his serious issues that he refuses to work at. It shows him to be a toxic person, and like Ali should just run away from this person and not forgive him. Like, if you ever find someone that's like sober Dominic, run away, because this person is toxic, and run away. So the next is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I also have the physical copy, and I love this copy. I love this cover. I actually gave 3 stars for this book. And Hamnet is a historical fiction that was born out of Maggie O'Farrell's fascination for Shakespeare's play Hamlet, and I was very excited about reading this book because the play and every other long-form work from Shakespeare I ever read, it stuck to me. I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciate. So I was very excited to read Hamnet when I first read about it, from the moment I first read about it. Again, it took me some time to pick up this book, probably because I was procrastinating, because I was so excited. I kept, no, I knew wait for a better time to read, but so, going back, the book takes place in 1580s countryside England, and it follows Agnes. She's the mother of 3 children, and one of them at 11 years old, her son named Hamnet. He dies of the plague, and years after the incident, her husband writes this play called Hamlet. The fact that I was super excited for this book didn't help. At the beginning, I thought the book was boring. I actually only started to enjoy it midway through it, but overall I still think this book is really well written. I would still recommend. I think it is a nice book. I don't think it was for me. For me, it was just a bit lackluster. Another book I have a copy of and that I read was Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This was a book I bought many years ago, but I also kept putting it off for a variety of reasons, because I was excited to read it when I first got it, because I have liked every single work I ever consumed from Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and I was quite excited when I bought it, like 2018, 2019. But I always kept putting it off because, again, excited, so procrastination. Also, this is quite a long book. It's like 530 pages in. It didn't seem to be a very light read. So whenever I was looking for a light read, this wasn't the book I was looking for, and basically I kept putting it off. And let's get to it. So Americana follows Ifemelu and Obinze. They are a young Nigerian couple, and we follow them grow up from teenagers to adults. The book discusses what it is like to be raised in military-ruled Nigeria, and what it was like to immigrate to post 9/11 USA and also the UK as a Black African Nigerian person. It talks about race dynamics in these countries, what it is like to go back into Nigeria and being young and single in the country and growing a family there during the early 2010s. I love the structure of this book. It is vignettes of their life with conversations, random conversations I have. I like the themes, which were race and immigration, and I love the writing. This is one of the things I write about Chimamanda. I really like the way she writes. But when it came like to the narrative itself, it took me 6 months to finish this book. And I considered to DNF it so many times, but so many times I forgot the amount of times because it was so many. The only reason I didn't do it is because I'm very stubborn and I really really don't like to leave things unfinished. So, you know, I went slow, very slow, but I finished it. And so let's get to why I don't like this book. One of them is the sheer amount of characters. I couldn't keep up with them. I think there's so many characters in this book, we needed some kind of summary of who each person was. It would be easier to follow. Also, the main problem for me was the main character, was Ifemelo. She was way too unlikable for me to enjoy the book. And yes, unlikable characters are a thing, and there is a way to make an unlikable characters kind of likable. Ifemelo is not one of those characters for me. She's just purely unlikable. I think she was an asshole. So Binze, she ghosted him for 15 years and they were in a serious relationship. And I also think she was an asshole to her other boyfriends we meet throughout the book. Like, no, they weren't perfect, but they didn't deserve what she did to them, and also the things she kind of asked of them in a way. I also sense this kind of superiority. I'm too good for this kind of complex from her, and this complex only seemed to grow when she goes back from the US to her home country, especially when she starts working at this magazine, some feminine magazine from Nigeria. And when she was working there all the time, all I could think is like, darling, this is not your magazine. Stick to your job and do what they asked you instead of trying to change everything and make it fit to what you want. Also, when she was working there, I couldn't help but feel kind of a white savior complex coming for her, even though she's not white, but kind of this, oh, I used to live in the US, I know better than you know, I used to live in the US, so I'm kind of superior because I used to have this famous sexual blog, so I know what I'm doing, so no, I'm better than you and you should listen to me because of that. I just don't like Femelo. For me, she was really annoying, and really, she's one of those characters I would trap in a pool in The Sims. Now, Obinze. At first, I really liked Obinze. He seemed like a fun person, fun character. But then Ifemelo went back to Nigeria, and spoiler alert, Obinze becomes an asshole to his wife. And he was not abusive to her, at least not physically abusive to her, but he just cheats on his wife constantly with Ifemelo. And the way he goes on about it, it's kind of like you're going to the pool with Ifemelo now, and I'm creating a wall around the pool, and you're just staying there, okay? Okay, so that is also, I can't help, I need to say this. This is for Ifemelo, because dear Ifem, if you don't want to be reminded that your boyfriend has a wife and kids, don't knowingly date a married man, because he has a wife and kids, babe. Also, yes, you are the bad person in this scenario. You are the one that like entered and is in the middle of them, okay? Yes, you are the problem, it's you. Luckily, the next book, it was better. It was also kind of a palate cleanser and I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Book Talk, for recommending me this book. It is Consider Me by Becca Mac. I gave it 4 stars. So Consider Me is a sports romance that follows star NHL player and fuckboy Carter Beckett and PE teacher Olivia, who I forgot the last name of this character. Overall, I think this was a very fun book, and I love the golden retriever energy, the unfiltered, silly, Disney-loving, Oreo-obsessed personality of Carter. I really liked him as a character, and I'm very excited to see him in the next books in the series, which is called Playing for Keeps. The series is called Playing for Keeps. So, going back to Consider Me, Olivia, she's there. Her main personality traits are being feisty and a tiny person, and the constant mention of Olivia's height and her height difference in relation to Beckett in relation to Carter. It was the one thing I found annoying about this book. It was the one problem I had with it. I personally would also love to know a bit more of her backstory and backstory behind her body image issues and trust issues, because the book makes it clear that it is partly because of Carter being famous and being in the spotlight and people comparing her to the people he was bothered with before. And also I know she has trust issues because of Carter's history of being a fuckboy. But for her to be this way, it needs to have something more behind it, something more in the past. So I would love to know more about that. But overall, this was a very fun read. I loved the secondary characters. I want books for his teammates. I know there is already a second book, which is about, I think it's Garrett. And then I know she's writing a third book on Adam. So I'm very excited for those. I want to read them. So yeah, overall, it was a fun read. It was a good palate cleanser. It is so corny, but also so cute, and I would really recommend this book if you want hockey romance, if you want a contemporary romance to just have some fun, you know. If you need a palate cleanser, this is a good one. And then we have the last physical book on this list, and it is another one I was very kind of excited to read when I first bought it, but I kept putting it off. Not necessarily because like I'm procrastinating because I'm excited, but just because I think this book is so beautiful and I liked having it in straight view from my bookshelf whenever I was in Zoom calls. So that's literally it. And honestly, I should have kept it that way because this book is Metropolis by Thea von Harbu. It is the eponymous novel inspired by the iconic sci-fi dystopian movie called Metropolis. The book was actually written shortly after the movie's release, and it was written by the screenwriter Thea von Harbu, and it was based on her original work for the screenwriting, her original idea, and her notes. And this book was boring. I also considered DNF in it, but turns out it is shorter than it actually looks, because when you pick it up, this book looks so long and it's also so heavy, which also didn't help because it wasn't comfortable reading this book, because it is like, I feel like I'm in a gym of so heavy this book is. I considered DNF in this book. I didn't do it because, again, I don't like to leave things unfinished, and also it is shorter than I thought because it has this beautiful, let me find one, illustrations. Was not like the prettiest illustrations. Okay, here is like a better illustration, a better example of it. So the book has full of like illustrations, and when he talks about the chapters, like this is how they announce the chapters. So it takes like 5 pages for the start of each chapter, and the chapters aren't long, so it was actually quite faster to read than I thought. But if you are interested, just watch the movie. It will take less time. It is the same thing. And this book was like just boring. Also, it definitely didn't help to find out Thea von Harbour, she didn't have nice political views, like she objectively didn't have nice political views. She worked with the Nazi party. She willingly worked with the Nazi party, so that also like didn't help the enjoyment of the narrative, because I just kept thinking, am I reading Nazi propaganda? Hopefully not. And after this book, I just needed a palate cleanser, because I need something light. I need something fun that would just be fun. So I read Accidentally Amy by Lynn Painter. It is a rom-com. It's a very cheesy rom-com. It follows Isabella Shea and Blake. They are co-workers. They have a meet cute at Starbucks because she drops her coffee on him, and then she starts to clean it, and then they start to flirt with each other, and then they meet in an elevator, and then they meet again in an elevator, and they exchange numbers, and then they find out he's her boss. But this is a rom-com with a happily ever after, and it is so cheesy. I really enjoyed this book, and if you want like a palate cleanser, a rom-com, this is a good one. It's like, I saw this Goodreads review that it is, for me, the definition for this book. It's cringe, but cute. But it's cringe, but it's cute. But it is cringe, but it is cute. Think meet cute, friends to lover stories, a great banter. That's this book. It's a palate cleanser. The characters are fun. They mention the Darkling. I found this book to be just the perfect fun and light detox from all the blah and boring books I read so far this year. And for considering the books I started reading afterwards, I think it worked. So that's it for my mini reviews for all the books I read recently. Have you ever read one of these books? If you did, please let me know your opinions about them. So if you like this video, give a like, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Bye!